The stars above the empty frontier world shimmered cold and distant. From her sky spire, broken and cracked with age, Elthrixa gazed at the lights. She had seen countless suns rise and fall, watched empires crumble, and felt civilizations vanish like mist. She was older than most life in the galaxy, older than the first cities humans had built on their planets. Her wings, vast and strong, rested folded over her great body, and her eyes reflected the emptiness around her. She had long ago stopped expecting company. Life had left her alone and she liked it that way. She heard a faint hum far below, a sound that disturbed the quiet she had carried for centuries. Her claws dug into the stone as she crouched and focused on the tiny movement. A human ship, battered and smoking, had crash-landed on the jagged rocks near her lair. She felt curiosity flicker in the depth of her being. Normally she would have ignored such weak creatures or destroyed them outright. But something in the vibrations of this ship felt different. Corin Hale stumbled from the wreckage, his suit scorched and torn. He coughed and shielded his eyes from the dust and sparks. He was small, fragile, and completely unarmed. Every instinct in Elthrixa screamed at her to strike, to erase the human before he could become a nuisance. He should have been afraid, running and screaming like the others. But he did not. He moved slowly, carefully, not as a threat, but as a visitor in her domain. The human froze when he saw her. Elthrixa was immense, her scales like molten metal, her eyes glowing with intelligence that had no equal in his lifetime. For a moment, neither of them moved. Time seemed to stretch as he realized the stories were true. Dragons were real, and he was standing in front of one that could end him with a single thought. He felt fear, yes, but not the desperate panic that came from facing other predators. Something deeper stirred in him, something that allowed him to speak calmly. "Hello," Corin said. His voice was soft, almost fragile, but it carried across the rocks. "I didn't mean to come here. I am sorry if I disturbed you." Elthrixa's eyes narrowed. Words like that were meaningless. Every being that had approached her either wanted something, worship, gold, power, or tried to kill her. Why should this human be any different? Yet the calmness in his tone made her pause. There was no fear, no deception. He was simple, ordinary. Yet somehow he did not tremble before her like all the others. Corin took a cautious step closer. He was careful not to look directly into her eyes, yet he did not retreat. He seemed to sense the power around him and still chose to move forward. I crashed," he continued. "I didn't know this place was yours. I have nowhere else to go. I just want to survive." Elthrixa tilted her head, listening. She had not heard words like these in centuries. No being had ever admitted weakness in her presence without trying to manipulate her. The human did not plead for his life. He did not try to bargain. He simply spoke of his need, of survival, of something she understood all too well. She had survived countless ages. She had endured loneliness heavier than any stone or metal. And here was a being, fragile and new, speaking honestly to her. Corin sank to the ground, letting his hands rest on the jagged rocks. He looked small, almost childlike, but he spoke with quiet confidence. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I don't want your gold. I don't want to control you. I just want to live." Elthrixa's tail shifted. It scraped against the stone, sending small tremors across the spire. She could feel the honesty in his words. He was different. Every creature that had approached her before had sought to dominate or destroy. This human simply existed. And for the first time in centuries she did not feel the instinct to annihilate. The wind howled across the spire, stirring the dust and lifting small stones into the air. Corin coughed but kept his focus. He looked at her, not with fear, not with awe, but with quiet understanding. He did not say much else. He simply stayed, breathing, waiting, giving her the space to decide what she would do. For hours they remained like this. She watched him and he watched her. The stars rotated above and the cold light touched her scales. She could feel the emptiness inside her, the centuries of solitude, the endless silence, and it was not unpleasant. But this human presence was different. He did not fill the emptiness, but he acknowledged it. He spoke to it without judgment or demand. Finally, Elthrixa spoke, her voice deep and resonant, shaking the rocks around them. "Why do you speak to me like this?" she asked. She did not roar. She did not demand submission. She asked simply and curiously. Corin met her gaze, steady and calm. "Because I know what it's like to be alone," he said. "I have seen people die. I have lost friends, families, worlds. I know how it feels when no one notices you, when everyone leaves. I know what silence feels like, and I know it hurts. I don't want you to hurt." I don't want you to be alone even if you are big and strong and old. Her eyes widened. None had ever understood her like this. She felt a strange stirring in her chest, a warmth she had forgotten. Was it trust? Curiosity? Something else? She did not know. She only knew that for the first time in millennia, she did not feel the instinct to chase him away. The human sat quietly, letting the moment stretch. And for the first time in her life, Elthrixa allowed herself to listen. Not as a predator, not as a ruler, but as one lonely being to another. The silence that had defined her existence began to change. It was no longer empty. It was no longer just hers. Outside, the wind roared, the stars glimmered, and the frontier world held its breath. The ancient dragon, who had lived alone through centuries of solitude, did not yet understand the human. She did not yet trust him. But something inside her shifted, and that shift was the beginning of a story that would not end in fear, but in connection. And for the first time, Elthrixa felt the faintest pull of hope. Corin stayed near the edge of the spire, careful not to move too fast or make sudden gestures. The crash had left him weak, but his mind was alert. Elthrixa, the ancient dragon, watched him with eyes that seemed to pierce through his very thoughts. He did not flinch. He did not raise a weapon. He simply spoke, softly, as though telling a story to the wind itself. I used to think being strong was everything, he said. I used to think fear could protect me. But it doesn't. I've learned that kindness is stronger than fear. The dragon's tail twitched. Her voice had never been used to words like this, words that carried neither threat nor promise. She had heard threats, commands, and cries of worship, but never this calm honesty. She tilted her massive head and let him continue. I've been alone too, Corin said. Not like you, of course. You're older than anyone alive. But I know what it's like to lose everything you care about, to watch the world move on while you stay behind. It hurts. It makes you want to hide. But hiding doesn't help. Not really. Talking, sharing, sometimes that helps even a little. Elthrixa's nostrils flared. She had spent centuries alone, guarding her pain as though it were treasure. No one had ever tried to share it with her. Corin did not ask for anything. He did not try to own her. He did not try to make her do what he wanted. He simply spoke as one who understood. He moved closer, sitting on a smooth rock near the edge. His hands rested on his knees. He looked tired, his suit torn, but his voice was steady. I know you've seen worlds rise and fall. I know you've survived what no human could imagine. And yet here you are, still alone. I don't think that's because you want to be alone. I think it's because no one ever tried to understand you. Elthrixa felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She had never felt warmth like this. She had never been spoken to in this way. Her life had been long, filled with battles, betrayals, and silence. But this human, he did not fear her. He did not want to conquer her. He simply listened. I'm not afraid of you, Corin said. I don't want to fight. I don't want to steal. I don't want to hurt. I just want to survive like anyone else. And maybe, just maybe you could let me stay a little while. The dragon exhaled slowly, a cloud of mist curling into the cold air. She had not been asked anything in centuries. She had not been offered a choice without consequences. And now here it was, a simple request. No pride, no demands, just words. Corin continued, telling her about his homeworld, a small planet far from the frontier, where people worked together to survive harsh environments. He spoke of his family, of friends lost to war and disease, of lessons learned through mistakes and sorrow. His words were quiet, yet full of life. Each story, each memory, seemed to brush against the dragon's centuries of solitude, touching a part of her that she had thought dead. People think we're weak, he said. They think we have nothing to offer compared to giants like you. But the truth is that humans survive because we care. We help each other. We don't have scales or wings or fire, but we have something stronger. We share. We listen. We choose to see others even when it's hard. Elthrixa's eyes glimmered. She had seen the rise and fall of species. She had witnessed countless acts of strength, cleverness, and cruelty. But no one had ever tried to reach her like this. No one had ever used words to bridge the gap between lives so different, so vast. The wind rose, whipping dust and small stones across the spire, but Corin did not flinch. He remained where he was, calm and honest. He waited, giving her the space to decide, to think, to feel. And slowly, she felt the centuries of armor around her heart begin to loosen. I don't understand you, she said finally. Her voice rumbled across the rocks, soft yet deep. Why do you speak to me this way? Everyone else wants my power, my fire, my life. You want nothing. I want nothing, Corin said, except to be heard. And I hope maybe that you will be heard too. I know you're tired of being alone. I know the universe has left you behind. But you don't have to stay like that forever. Not if you don't want to. For a long time neither spoke. The stars wheeled above them, indifferent and cold, while the ancient dragon considered the small human before her. She could destroy him easily. No one could stop her. But something in his voice, in his honesty, made her hesitate. For the first time she felt the possibility of trust. Corin broke the silence with another story, this one about the first time he survived an accident on a distant planet. He had been scared, alone, unsure if he would live. But someone had reached out, helped him, and he had learned that even in the harshest places, connection could save lives. He did not tell her this to teach her. He told her because he wanted her to hear it, to feel that even creatures as small as humans could understand suffering. The dragon shifted, folding her wings closer, and listened. The sound of his voice became a rhythm she recognized, a pulse of life in the vast emptiness that surrounded her. She did not yet speak, but she began to feel something she had not felt in centuries. An interest in another life, not as prey, not as a challenge, but as a companion in understanding. Hours passed and the human never left. He ate little, drank little, but he remained patient. He never demanded, never pleaded, never raised his voice. And Elthrixa, in turn, found herself learning patience, learning to watch, learning to listen in a way she had not in countless years. Maybe, she said finally, almost to herself, you are not like the others. Corin smiled faintly. I hope I'm not, he said, because I want to see the real you. Not the fearsome dragon that everyone else sees. The real you. For the first time in her long, long life, Elthrixa felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Hope. It was small, fragile like the human himself, but it was there. And for the first time in centuries she did not feel the need to roar, to threaten, to chase him away. She felt curiosity, interest, and, maybe, just maybe, the beginning of trust. The stars continued to shine above them, the wind continued to blow, and two lives, so different yet alike in their loneliness, began to find a quiet understanding. Corin stayed near the edge of the spire, repairing his small equipment with careful hands. Elthrixa watched him from above, her massive wings folding around her like a protective cloak. The stars above them were cold and distant, but the quiet between them felt alive, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She had survived centuries, perhaps millennia, yet this human had opened something inside her she had not felt in ages. He spoke again, quietly, as though the wind itself would carry his words. I've lost people I loved, he said. Family, friends, even entire cities. I've watched things I couldn't save. I felt the weight of being small in a universe that doesn't care. But I've also learned that telling someone, even a stranger, makes it lighter. Sometimes it is enough just to share. Elthrixa shifted on the spire, the stone trembling under her weight. She had carried weight far greater than this human could imagine, witnessing entire civilizations vanish, watching suns die, feeling the emptiness of centuries without companionship. Yet his words struck her, not as a challenge but as recognition. Someone had listened, someone had acknowledged her pain, not feared it, not tried to exploit it. Corin worked on his damaged communicator, muttering to himself, but his eyes never left her. I don't understand everything about you, he said. I won't pretend I do. But I know what it is to feel alone. And I know that it is hard. Harder than almost anything else. The dragon tilted her head. Hard. She had known hardship, yes, but loneliness had been her companion for longer than memory could hold. No human had ever dared to speak to her about such things. They had either run, screamed, or tried to control her. This one simply spoke the truth. She finally lowered her massive head closer to him, letting her breath stir the air around his face. You are not afraid? She asked, her voice like distant thunder. You see me, and yet you do not tremble? Corin shook his head. I've been afraid of many things, he said. But not you. Not really. I know what fear can do. It can make people cruel. It can make them blind. But it can also make them careful, thoughtful. I've learned the difference. And I choose, not fear. I choose honesty. Elthrixa's eyes softened slightly. Honesty. It was a foreign word in her long life. It was not weakness, it was not manipulation, it was simply truth. For centuries she had guarded herself against deception, against betrayal. But here before her stood someone who offered only truth and nothing more. Corin moved slightly closer, sitting cross-legged on the rocks. I don't have much, he said. Food is scarce, water even more so. My ship is broken. But I can live like this for a while if I have to. I can survive alone. I have done it before. But being alone, it changes you. Makes the world feel heavier than it should. Elthrixa considered his words. She had known weight beyond imagining. The weight of centuries, the weight of watching life rise and fall, the weight of solitude that pressed on her chest like a stone. And now, listening to the human, she felt a strange lifting, as though the act of sharing might make the burden lighter. You speak as if your kind has nothing to offer me, she said. Why do you stay? You could leave, find another place, another world. Why choose this? Why speak to me? Corin looked up at her, eyes steady. Because I understand in some way, he said. I know what it is to feel left behind. And I also know that listening, really listening, is rare. Maybe the universe is cruel, maybe it is silent, but if someone tries to hear you even just for a little while, that matters. It matters more than fire or gold or strength. Elthrixa exhaled slowly, letting the mist curl into the cold air. She had never thought of listening as power, yet it felt powerful now. The human did not command her. He did not demand her attention. He simply shared, simply existed, simply acknowledged her existence without fear or greed. That in itself was remarkable. Hours passed. Corin spoke of his childhood, of mistakes he had made, of lessons learned through pain and loss. He did not speak to teach her, nor to tame her, but to connect. Every word seemed to brush away a layer of dust from her ancient heart, revealing feelings she had hidden for centuries. Loneliness was still there, yes, but it was no longer unbearable. It was shared even slightly, and that made it lighter. Elthrixa shifted again, this time closer, her massive claws resting on either side of him, not threatening but protective. I do not understand humans, she admitted. Your lives are short. Your strength is nothing compared to mine. Yet, you endure. You speak. You share. Why? Because it is all we have, Corin said. We are small, fragile, and easy to break. But we survive by caring, by noticing, by speaking the truth. We have no fire, no wings, no scales, but we make a difference by seeing each other. That is our strength. That is what I offer. Nothing more, nothing less. The dragon remained silent, but inside, something shifted. For centuries, she had believed herself alone because no one dared to see her. She had believed that others feared her or wanted to use her, and that she must endure life in silence. Now, sitting above the jagged rocks with a small, honest human at her feet, she felt a glimmer of something she had not felt in countless centuries: connection. Corin reached into his pack and pulled out a small, simple meal. He did not offer it to her, but he ate quietly, without ceremony, without expectation. He had nothing to prove. And Elthrixa, watching him, realized that this quiet courage, this simple honesty, was stronger than the fiercest battle she had ever fought. Night deepened. The stars wheeled above, cold and endless. And the ancient dragon, who had carried the weight of the ages alone, allowed herself a thought she had not dared to have in centuries. Maybe she could bear company after all. Maybe the weight of her long life did not have to crush her entirely. And Corin, sitting quietly on the rocks, unaware of the change he had stirred, simply told another story, his words soft and steady, bridging the gap between two lives as different as fire and wind, as stars and stone. For the first time in her endless life, Elthrixa felt that the weight she carried could be shared. And for the first time she felt that sharing it might make all the difference. The quiet of the frontier world was shattered one morning by a distant hum that grew into a roar. Corin looked up from his small repairs, his heart tightening. In the skies above, sleek human ships appeared, their engines bright and harsh against the cold light of the stars. They were a salvage fleet, sent to claim energy signatures they did not understand. They saw Elthrixa not as a creature of history, not as a being with memory or feeling, but as a weapon, a prize, a resource to exploit. Elthrixa's massive wings spread wide, and the ground trembled beneath her weight. Her eyes glowed like molten metal, reflecting the incoming ships. She had faced fleets before, but never like this, small, precise, and coldly confident. She lowered her head, roaring a warning that shook the mountains. Yet Corin did not flinch. He stood at the edge of the spire, looking up at the dragons and the ships, his voice carrying in the wind. "Wait!" he shouted, even as the fleet scanners began to lock onto her. "Stop. You don't understand her." The ships hesitated, their weapons still locked on. Corin climbed higher, moving closer to the dragon, and she allowed it, folding her wings slightly. She sensed the tension in the fleet, in the humans who believed they were clever and strong. And she sensed something different in this one. This human had no fear, no arrogance, only truth. "They see you as a weapon," Corin said softly, speaking to her, but loud enough for the fleet to hear. "They don't see what you are. They don't know what you've lived through. They think you are just a force to take, a prize to claim. But that is not who you are. Elthrixa's massive head tilted, her eyes following him. Her roar had calmed, replaced by the low rumble of curiosity. Corrin's words were honest. He did not threaten the fleet. He did not raise a weapon. He simply explained, and in his voice, there was authority born of understanding, not fear. I know humans like them, Corrin continued. They think strength is about fire, about power, about destruction. But strength can also be kindness. Strength can be choosing not to destroy. That is what matters. You are not theirs to take. You are not a tool. You are alive. And that alone should be enough for them to leave. The fleet captain, a sharp-eyed woman named Tressa Vale, hesitated. Her eyes scanned the dragon, calculating risk, profit, and danger. She had expected an easy capture. Instead, she saw the small human standing between her ships and the ancient creature, speaking without fear, without weapons, without manipulation. Something in his courage and honesty unsettled her. Elthrixa lowered her massive wings and exhaled a warm mist. She did not move to attack. She did not roar again. She simply waited, allowing Corrin's words to reach both her and the fleet. The air between them was tense, yet filled with a strange quiet, the quiet of someone finally being heard. You have no right to take her, Corrin said firmly. She is not yours. She is not a weapon. She has lived longer than your fleet, your corporations, your rules. And she has seen more than any of you can understand. Leave this system. Mark it off limits. Or you will leave empty-handed, not because of fire or claws, but because you were warned. You will not understand her like I do. Tressa hesitated again. Corrin's words were not threats. They were truth. And truth, when spoken without fear or ego, carried weight. She studied him, the small human who dared stand before a dragon, and then she studied Elthrixa. She saw the ancient scales, the power contained within, and for a moment she realized that some things were beyond ownership, beyond conquest. The wind howled, sweeping across the spire, carrying dust, rock, and the faint warmth of the dragon's breath. The fleet's engines hummed, but slowly, one by one, the ships disengaged. The scanners retracted. Tressa made a choice, not from fear, not from pity, but from understanding that some lives were not meant to be bargained for. She gave a signal, and the fleet turned away, leaving the frontier world and its guardian behind. Corrin sank to his knees, exhausted, but his eyes never left Elthrixa. He had not used weapons. He had not shouted threats. He had simply spoken the truth, standing between life and destruction with nothing but honesty and courage. And it had been enough. The dragon exhaled, a long, slow breath that carried relief, awe, and something else she had not felt in centuries. She looked down at the small human, sitting quietly amidst the jagged rocks. You risked yourself, she said, her voice low and resonant. You could have been killed. Corrin smiled faintly, brushing dust from his torn suit. I could have, he said. But I could not stand by and watch them treat you as if you were nothing. You are more than that. You are alive, and that matters more than anything else. Elthrixa lowered her head closer to him, the tip of her massive snout nearly touching his shoulder. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down, yet for the first time, it did not feel unbearable. It felt shared. The danger had passed, but the bond between them had grown stronger. She had survived countless threats, but none had tested her in this way, through understanding, not force. Corrin stood slowly, gathering his tools, and looked out at the retreating fleet. They won't be back soon, he said. But even if they are, we can face them. Together. The dragon considered this. Together. She had lived alone for millennia, carrying the memory of civilizations and the silence of centuries. And yet, here was a human, small, fragile, but unafraid, speaking as though the weight of the universe could be shared, as though connection could be stronger than fear. For the first time, Elthrixa felt something she had not dared to feel. Hope. Not a fragile hope, but a quiet, steady one, born from understanding and courage. And as Corrin sat again, quietly repairing his supplies, she allowed herself to lower her wings completely, settling beside him. The spire no longer felt empty. The frontier world no longer felt cold and silent. Above them, the stars continued to shine, indifferent yet constant. And below, two lives, one ancient, one young, began to recognize that strength was not always in fire or claws, not always in speed or power. Sometimes, it was in standing for what was right, in speaking truth, in sharing the weight of ages and experiences without fear. And in that quiet, they found something stronger than anything the fleet had sought to take: trust. The frontier world was quiet again. The salvage fleet had gone, leaving the sky empty except for the cold stars above. Corin Hale sat on the jagged rocks, repairing the small tools and equipment he had salvaged from his broken ship. He moved slowly, tired but careful. Elthrixa lay nearby, her massive wings folded around her body, eyes glowing softly in the dim light. For the first time in centuries she did not feel the crushing weight of solitude. Corin looked up at her and smiled faintly. "We survived," he said softly. "Together. Not with weapons, not with fire, just honesty and courage." The dragon tilted her head. "I have survived countless threats," she said, her voice low and resonant. "I have endured the rise and fall of worlds. Yet, I have never faced anything like this." Corin nodded. "It's different," he said. "Most see you as a monster. I see you as you. And I wanted you to see me as me. Not a predator. Not a conqueror. Just someone who understands, even if only a little." Elthrixa's massive eyes softened. She remembered all the centuries of silence, the endless loneliness, the cold nights spent alone in the sky spire. And now this small human had offered something she had not known she wanted: company. Not forced, not demanding, just company shared quietly through words and presence. "You speak as if trust is easy," she said. "I have learned to trust few and none for long." Corin shook his head. "Trust isn't easy. It's not a gift, it's a choice. You choose to open yourself a little and I choose to honor that. That's how it starts. Small steps. That's all anyone can do." Elthrixa considered his words. She had thought her long life had taught her everything. Yet here, in the presence of a single human, she felt she had learned something new, that connection could exist without domination, that strength could be quiet, and that even an ancient dragon could feel less alone. The sun of the frontier world began to rise, brushing the jagged rocks with a soft orange light. Corin stood, stretching his arms. "I have to repair the comms," he said. "Eventually I may leave. But I don't have to leave yet." Elthrixa lowered her head closer, the tip of her snout near his shoulder. "And if you leave," she asked, "will I be alone again?" Corin shook his head gently. "You won't. Not completely. Because now you know someone saw you. Someone understood you. And that matters more than anything else. You carry that with you always. And maybe you'll find more like me someday." The dragon exhaled a long, slow breath, sending warm mist curling into the cold morning air. She had spent millennia thinking she was unneeded, unwanted, unworthy of companionship. Yet this human had changed that. He had shown her that even the smallest being, with no fire, no wings, no scales, could reach across the void and touch her heart. Corin approached carefully and set a small tray of water and food near her. "I brought this for you," he said. "I know you don't need it like I do, but maybe it's something we can share. Not because you need it, not because I expect anything. Just because." Elthrixa sniffed at the food, then slowly nudged it aside with her snout. She had no need for sustenance, yet she understood the gesture. It was not about survival, it was about acknowledgement, presence, and respect. It was about being seen. "I am not used to this," she admitted. Being seen. Being acknowledged. Being spoken to without fear. "You deserve it," Corin said softly. "All of it. You've lived through more than anyone could imagine. You've carried centuries of memory, of pain, of solitude. And now you can share it even if only a little. That's enough." The dragon lowered herself fully, resting her head near him, close enough that he could feel the heat of her scales. It was a gesture of trust, of connection, of something she had denied herself for centuries. And Corin simply sat quietly, letting her presence settle over him like a warm blanket. Time passed slowly. The wind whispered through the jagged rocks. The frontier world held its quiet, indifferent beauty. And for the first time Elthrixa did not feel empty. The loneliness that had haunted her for centuries felt lighter, softened by the honesty and courage of a single human. "You will not leave me, will you?" she asked, not demanding, only curious. "I may leave one day," Corin admitted. "But I will not forget you. And that matters. You are not alone, not entirely. You have a friend now. Someone who sees you, someone who understands you. That's stronger than anything else in the universe." The dragon considered this, her ancient mind turning over the simple human words. She had survived countless battles, weathered storms, watched empires rise and fall. Yet nothing had been as powerful as this: understanding, honesty, connection. She had thought herself unneeded, feared, forgotten. Now she was neither. She was seen, and that made her stronger, not weaker. Corin stood finally, gathering his small tools and supplies. "I will stay as long as you want me," he said. "I don't have to leave yet. Not if you don't want me to. Elthrixa lowered her eyes to meet his. In them he saw centuries of wisdom, sorrow, and now, a glimmer of hope. She exhaled, sending a warm current of air over him, a gentle acknowledgement. It was her way of saying without words that she accepted him. That she no longer wished to be alone. The sun rose higher, painting the jagged world in gold and orange. Corin and the dragon sat together, different in size, in strength, in age, yet connected by something stronger than all of it. Trust, understanding, and the quiet courage to face life without fear. And in that shared silence, the frontier world was no longer cold or empty. Two lives, one ancient and one human, had found companionship. They had found hope. They had found a bond that would endure, not through force or fire, but through honesty, courage, and the simple act of seeing each other. For the first time in her endless life, Elthrixa felt whole. Not because the universe had changed, but because she had someone beside her who chose to see her, who chose to stay, and who reminded her that even the oldest and strongest creatures did not have to face life alone. And Corin, small, fragile, yet unafraid, smiled. Together they watched the frontier world awaken, two lives bound by understanding, no longer alone.